look at today's our world of this whole COVID. Everyone's talking about resilience. Everyone's talking about adaptability. Everyone's talking about new skills. And I think for us, we've been rehearsing this all our life.
True.
Every 3 years, it's a new place. So what are you going to do is adapt, adapt, adapt.
Hi there. Thank you so much for joining me one more time on the Absolutely Right podcast. I'm your host Aditi Surana. I'm a behavioral analyst and high performance coach. On our Wednesday episodes, we invite a guest who is a high performer himself and try to understand their personality, their secrets behind success, and most importantly, their inspiring stories. Our guest on the show today is Ashish Babu, who is a chief marketing officer for TCS Europe and UK. He handles more than 28 countries, by the way. In today's conversation, Ashish speaks about how being an army kid has influenced him to become a better leader, even a better sports person. Every time he had to survive and deal with an uncomfortable situation, he actually used his lessons from childhood. During the lockdown, TCS decided to use technology to make their customers feel better, feel motivated, feel inspired, and survive through the journey. And Ashish speaks about his contribution to it. One of his lines that really stayed with me is helping is new selling. Think about it. If you really genuinely want to help your customer move forward, grow, then that becomes your greatest brand association. Things that you learn from experts on the podcast, like Absolutely Right. So, without further ado, let me get this conversation with Ashish started right away. Hi, Ashish. Welcome to the Absolutely Right podcast. How are you doing?
I'd be lovely to meet you. I'm curious and I'm looking forward to our conversation. As human beings, we're going to constantly evolve. So I think what I've learned about me is not going to be the same what I'm going to learn from you. So I'm absolutely going to look forward to
That's
this
amazing. Great
conversation.
start.
Yeah.
So, for our listeners, I have asked Ashish to send us his handwriting sample. He has written on a blank sheet of paper, which was unruled, and it was a spontaneous paragraph, whatever came to his mind. The idea of these conversations that we have every time on our Wednesday episode is to get to know the leader, the high performer, and dive deep into the secrets that they have about their performance and what can we learn from it. So let me get started. The first thing that comes to my mind looking at his handwriting is you are a highly independent person. And I'm saying that
Love it.
because when you write your personal pronounced I, which is the capital I in your when you pronounce I am Ashish, so that particular I is treated differently when it comes to graphology, does not have any horizontal line on the top or at the bottom. That means as a person, when you think about your decisions, you think about your life, you always went against what the normal norms are. And also, you chose to be an independent, clear voice when it came to your parents. Even if they didn't agree with your choices, you articulated what exactly you felt. Even if you didn't get permissions to go about it and jump into things, you chose to stick to your ground and paid a very high price for that. That was a long explanation of what I said, but if you have any example as you smile, please tell us what is that.
I think you just nailed it. You couldn't have been right about this. And it's funny. After so many years, I'm trying to figure out every decision which I made. I think it was always against the tide, and I never had any data to back it. It was just about just awareness and your gut feeling. And you're right. As a child, I've made decisions which my parents thought, are you really thinking from your head? Are you just, thinking because you just want to do something different and be defined? Simple case was, my father being in the defense, being in the Air Force. That could have been a great life for me. I absolutely admire him. I think a lot of my, leadership skills come from seeing him, how he managed his own, people. And that was such a straight answer for me to, join the forces.
Like your
And, my
brother.
surrounding, like my brother, the surroundings, the school I studied, like the Kendra Vidyalaya, which was like the school, default school every time you got posted. But I think there was a time after moving from different air base when I moved to Delhi. I think Delhi just changed my mind. Delhi was like, this whole melting pot of, our democracy, our food, our lovely, traffic, heat. But also among all that adversity, I think people just have this belief of, trying to do and trying to compete and be the best. So
Right.
I think that got me going, saying that, okay, fine. I think there's an opportunity for me to do something different. And it wasn't easy to explain. And I wasn't even clear what I wanted to be.
Right.
So that was even harder to go and explain to my parents that I am not going to join army, but I want to do this because I didn't know what I want to do. This was going to
So
look like.
basically,
So
you're
those,
saying
yeah,
that you said that I don't want to do this. I don't know what I
yeah,
want, but I clearly know what I don't want. Is it?
yeah, yeah. It was like that. I mean, I still in my mind, I'm an army brat, and I still think like that. A lot of my decision making comes in that. But I could have used. I just felt all that learning I could use in, as my dad says, in the civilian life.
Mm. I would agree with most of the things that you said, but one thing I don't agree that you do not rely on data. And I'm saying that because when I look at your writing, it has very sharp, pointed letter M's and N's. So every time, instead of a curve in the letter M, there's a point, which talks about very keen observation that you have of everything and everyone around you. So you read between the lines, you observe deeply, you do not miss the details. And that is your data assimilation style. You would not look at numbers the way everyone else does, but for you, the data points are in other people, in the gaps that you observe. Even when you're shopping, like normal groceries and things like that, you constantly observe things that people are doing and why they're not doing things. So that is like the data processing I believe you rely on.
I think you're right. I mean, that is the part which came to me because I think, as we spoke earlier, was I've been, every 3 years uprooted and taken to a new city.
Mhm.
And the only way for me to assimilate, understand the culture, people, was about learning about them quickly. And that's how, I mean, if you're going to be a new kid in the class, how are you going
It's
to make
tough.
sure, yeah, yeah, exactly. So you're going to really think about, what's the favorite food, what's the favorite sport, what does people get going, what's the movie which you should be watching. And that had to be a quick analysis of your surrounding. I mean, the old, in our times, there was no concept of emotional intelligence, but
Mhm.
that existed.
Of
Emotional
course.
intelligence is about, you're trying to figure out, how you're going to build relations, what gets people excited beyond, you know, just a superficial ask. So I think a lot of my, I think assumptions were made on, as you said, data, but that data was about, how you're going to make better relationships, how you're going to make more friends, how you're going to fit into a classroom. So that was all about. And I think it was second in nature, but I never thought that was an advantage. But you're right. I mean, I use that in my work also. Is about simplifying and looking at information and simplifying and using it to make decisions. Yeah.
I have many friends who are army kids, and I know how tough it is for you to like move schools and adapt to the new environment. If I have to ask you, things that you learned as a child, how do you think has affected your leadership style, specifically in this
Oh,
context?
I mean, listen. I think there's a quite an interesting. I mean, the army kids or the defense kids have this a bit of arrogance in our life. We think because we've
I
been
agree.
moved. Yeah, we've been moved around. We highly adaptable. We fit into situations which we've not been thrown into. We learn new things quickly. So I think that's. I mean, you look at today's our world of this whole COVID. Everyone's talking about resilience. Everyone's talking about adaptability. Everyone's talking about new skills. And I think for us, we've been rehearsing this all our life.
True.
Every 3 years, I mean, it's a new place. So what are you going to do is adapt, adapt, adapt. And I think that's what we've done. But also, I think another bug we have is this, which I call a 3 or a 4 year itch. Once you've done that, because every new move is like a project. And
Experiment.
once, yeah, exactly. And once you've accomplished, you're like saying, okay, what next to do? Which
Right.
also is not a great if you're a family man, because, My wife, who lived all her life in Bombay, since getting married, has moved to Delhi, to London, to Amsterdam, and I don't think so she enjoys that.
Sure.
But yeah, so yeah, so that's the negative also of that.
That's
Yeah,
interesting because, like every time people decide to move from one vertical to another, from one organization to another, they do not dare to do it because they wonder what all would change. Breaking the
yeah,
comfort zone is such a difficult thing. And in a way, it sounds like, as you talk about it, that is a game that you love to ace every single time, like breaking the boundaries, recreating yourself. So, do you like purposely reinvent yourself every now and then?
yeah. I think absolutely. I mean, I give you simple examples. Is I'm a person, when I used to move to every new city, I would go back to my dad and say, hey, I played cricket, but nobody plays cricket here. So he says, adapt, figure out what people play. So I went and played tennis. Then I learned tennis, got good at tennis, then moved to another airbase and people played, let's say, volleyball. So I had to go and learn volleyball. So I think what happens is you develop basically an ability to have a foundation and then become a sponge in a way to take on new things. And I think that's what I've done also, from my career. Just also, with my own kids, and when I speak to my wife, is, okay, if you're going to live in London, what is that thing we can learn which makes us as local? Because, otherwise we could have just stayed in Bombay.
So
So,
do you have
yeah,
a hack to go about it? Like how do you adapt to a place?
and I mean, something. It's the same thing which you would do. I mean, if you move from Delhi to Bombay, where would you go? I mean, where's the best food? I
Food?
mean, everybody. Yeah, I mean, where's the best food? If it's Mahesh Lunch Home, if you like fish, or if you want to have a patrani, so you go to a Parsi, restaurant of Britannia. So it's the same case in London. I mean, where do you get the best roast? Which pub is which is where Shakespeare ever wrote a story? Where do you go? So you're going to find those melting points, or you're going to find the waterhole, which I call them.
Right.
And that's where you're going to find your interest, and that's where you also connect with the culture. So
So
that's the key
basically
thing.
you're saying that if you are new in a place, ask people where to eat and go out with them and eat there, is it?
I think food. Listen, what do people care about? I mean, ultimately, as Indians, our life revolves around food. We get up in the morning thinking about food, going to bed thinking about food. So why not then use that to our advantage?
So like mothers asking you khana khaya kya all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hear you. I hear
Exactly.
you. Other thing that is clear, very, very important thing in your handwriting is the way you're constantly thinking about the future, thinking about the possibilities that you would like to engage with, thinking about where can you take this project where nobody else has gone. This is almost like conquering a new planet pretty much, but with your thinking and with your ideas. And you mentioned that you had a very drastic career move, especially with TCS, where it was tough and it was not something that you had done before. I would love to know, our listeners to hear that story, because it is such a difficult story of adaptability and gamifying survival, if I may say.
I mean, yeah, I mean, listen, I love the point which you said. I mean, I'm always thinking ahead. I mean, I always love the movie of Nostradamus where he predicted the world in a good and a bad way. But I like to predict, at least with all the data and awareness which I have, is where are the trends? From a business point of view, how humans are going to react when things start opening up. How I need to start thinking how my family, my colleagues, my friends who are going to start changing when the world opens up. And I'm constantly thinking about that because that also is a consumer behavior. That also
Right.
is everything from adaptability point of view. Now, just from my own perspective, my life has been, I've been a comms person. I mean, I was not a great writer. I think you see my handwriting obviously is till computers didn't come, that handwriting was fairly well exposed. So I
Mm.
really had to work hard to explain people what I've written. But I think what I had very clear, I think from my upbringing was clarity in thinking, ability to communicate. Because if you can't communicate sharply, and especially you're going to go to new cultures, you're going to struggle to connect with people. So I use that as an advantage when I work with fairly large public relations firms, and that gave me an amazing ability to basically work with um, clients who had complex technologies, but ultimately those technologies was about helping humans. And that's one of the things, I use that as my consistent way every time, getting into the habit of asking the right question. What is this technology? Who's it going to help? How are they going to benefit?
Weren't you very
And
young when you started this, like really
I,
asking questions and handling big accounts?
yeah, I did. And I was, as you said, I was very hungry to, so I worked on like clients like Intel, worked on SAP, and these were, they're global
Big
leaders in their own
clients,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. And to sit in front, at the age of 25, 24, to sit in front of a, CEO or a vice president and tell him, this is what you got to bet on. And I have nothing to show but, just my own skill and my convincing powers to say, this is the campaign you should focus on. This is the story you should focus on. This is the outcome it's going to look like.
So
So my job was to
was
prepare
it a
them.
matter of chance or you worked towards it?
I think I was ruthless in learning about every client of mine. I was obsessive about their business. I really wanted to understand, and I would spend a lot of time, as you said, my ability to look at data. So I would really read a lot. I would also, if I worked with people, I looked at their leadership style. What helps them succeed?
Hmm.
What gets them motivated? And how can I be a bridge to that? I mean, how can I help them in that journey? So I think once you
That,
have
that
that, yeah,
that point is wonderful. Can you just explore a bit more on this? Like, what do you mean by how can I help? Sometimes your job doesn't demand that, and your, probably other people around you might not like you walking out of your space and interfering in their space.
I've always approached people as, everyone's in a journey. Everyone's in a journey. I mean, like you and me, what do I care about? I care about my family. I care about my community, and I care about my personal growth. So
Right.
to me, that's the lens I look at. And, if somebody who I worked, I look at, what takes them. There was a world we used to be in a very formal mode. We said, okay, this is 9 to 5, then we go home. But not really. I mean, I do care about at 9 to 5, what is the score of India against England? I do care about, what's my next holiday.
Right.
So I think somewhere, I think we really I used to think about is don't break that world. That world is consistent.
Hmm.
And if you can have a conversation with someone and they think you can value add, I think there's an ability for you to strike a conversation. And that's what I did. I still am, in touch with many of those leaders who are sitting in top companies because I always care about, and they always come back and say, Ashish, I'm going to be here for 3 years and this is my goalpost.
Hmm.
What can we do about it? And that is surreal for me. At age of 25, somebody saying, hey, 25, 30, that, hey, can you help me in this journey? But
Right.
you have to have the data and the confidence to ask the right question. Otherwise, you can make an ass out of yourself.
True. True. And
Correct?
that's what people
And
are
that have
scared
to,
of.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So you gotta do it with performance. You gotta show them what you can deliver, and you gotta consistently then show them that this is the way to do it. And I think people come around. I mean, it's not hard. Yeah,
And you are an extensive risk taker. I'm saying that because in graphology, when we look at a handwriting sample, the way you utilize the space is an essential element. One of the things we call left and right margins is like how far do you go towards the right side
yeah.
of the page. In your case, you tend to go, especially when you were young, you were way more prone to take risk, and I'm sure you would have fallen on your face. And how did you maintain to have the confidence, to show up again and kind of fight the embarrassment? What did you do for that?
I think I've always had this conviction. I think in a way I practice that because of my background. I mean, because of being uprooted, there's all not that every time I've walked into a class, people have liked me.
I'm sure.
I've not made a friend immediately, but what happens is it's the persistence which comes in, where you say, "Don't worry, it'll happen." Right now, you're not getting there, but you will make friends, and I think that's what I've done. I mean, I have worked in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay, Delhi, London, Amsterdam, and
And
I've
let's
like
add to that that currently how many countries are under your belt?
so around 28 countries in Europe and UK, which come under my purview, and that's the brand which I'm working to build for TCS in those markets.
Wow.
So and how does that happen? I mean, it's simple. I mean, if there was a time I used to work in Tata Sky, and we were trying to launch digital TV. I needed to understand which channels in Sun is the most popular channel in south of India. If which newspaper like Anand Patrika in Calcutta, Inadu in Hyderabad, I literally had to have the data on my fingerprints. So that actually, in a way, set me to understand how Europe was. Because once you understand what people read and consume and how people's views are, that also is a great gateway for you to look at the other parts of the world.
What has changed for you, especially work-wise, post-pandemic? Like things everybody's doing differently. They're exploring the same situation with, more technology supporting it, and so many other things happening. So at TCS, in your experience, what are the things, if you have to talk about a few projects that were excellent or mind-boggling, what would that be?
I think TCS is a phenomenal company. We, in a way, for us, we run digital infrastructure for many countries, be it India, be it UK, be it Europe. I mean, you look at all the essential services, all the retail companies, all the airline, all the
Wow.
utilities, all that is, in a way, we are the ones who are, in a way, keeping. And I think essentially, if I think about what TCS in a way did was kept that backbone going when everybody was moving to home, and all these companies had to give that experience from literally moving their own colleagues, moving their own suppliers, and delivering 24 by 7 non-stop services. So I think that was a phenomenal experience of what this company does. The other aspect was, I think, also great ability from our leadership to support the clients. I think I always believe the word which I kept consistently using. We are a true brand, and I always say helping was the new selling during COVID.
Wow. Wow. Brilliant.
So yeah, so for us it was that. I mean, we were just said, go help the customer, help them, because they need us. And I think that's what we did as a marketing function, making sure, we could communicate well with them, we could tell their stories. Because ultimately, what did COVID do? COVID, I think, did two things. On a personal front, I think it challenged us fundamentally who we are we going to survive? And if we survive, what's going to become of us? And I think I'm sure everyone, and a client is a human. Everyone's in this, everyone was looking for data. I think everybody wanted to figure out what can I learn, which will help me and my company and my community get out of this. So a lot of our work went in, telling those stories to them, because what they wanted to know was what was working in, let's say, in Singapore could work in
Sure.
US, and what could work in UK could. So it was quite like, trying to take information and sharing with customers and getting them to say, okay, fine, this is inspiration. If you take it and build further, there's hope for all of us. So it was quite interesting. A lot of the marketing effort went in that, working very closely with the business. And also other thing we did was, creating opportunities for our customers to connect with, I mean, our customers in US or Europe or Australia, not necessarily meet if they don't meet physically.
Of course. Yeah.
Here, they were connecting virtually. I mean, we had events where someone's dog was barking, someone's child was, and I think it was very human. I mean, people involved. I mean, your clients invited you in their kitchens, bedrooms, drawing rooms. So I think we all have gone through
True.
that, and I think that was surreal. I mean, that was an acceptability. Nobody said I know it all. Everybody said it's a democratic way, and if you know it better, teach me. So and yeah, I mean, I as a team, I think extremely proud. How um, um, our leadership and our colleagues just came around. We also won, just doing all this fun stuff. We won almost 21 awards
During
on
the
digital
pandemic?
campaigns. Yeah, during the pandemic, which is
Wow.
on digital campaigns. On our one of the most interesting work, which I would love to say, is that we're big partners with some of the biggest marathons. So we
Right.
do the London, New York, Mumbai Marathon. So one of the things we felt was, if everything is going to become virtual, how are you going to connect with people? So in Amsterdam, we actually took an inspiration where we said, okay, let's think about if Aditi is going to run there, what is she going to miss the most? What she's going to miss is Marathon is a sport. You run in public, but you run alone.
Right.
What
True.
inspires you is the crowd cheering, the atmosphere, and you look at others who may not have more capability than you, but you say, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. So we
Mhm.
actually created a whole soundtrack, and the soundtrack basically was recorded in the canals of Amsterdam with the mayor of Amsterdam doing a
Wow.
tee off. And we had the bells of the cycles and the birds. And it was basically about saying you put that on and you get Amsterdam Marathon, which was a way of saying that you're not running alone.
And
So
where people were running that time, actually, physically.
actually, they were running either in parks, they were running on their treadmills, they were running, in the night because there were curfews.
Right.
Remember the world we lived
Yeah, of course.
previously?
Of
They were
course.
running in their backyards. So what we wanted to give them is a sonic experience, which
Wow.
just gets them, emotionally. And I think we got amazing response. I mean, now we're doing that for other marathons because I think that's what humans crave for
Of
is,
course. And doing that
experiences.
during the lockdown where you could not connect with other people is as you said, is actually helping people feel inspired, feel
Exactly.
motivated, work towards something that they want to participate and be feel the communication and connectivity. That's amazing. It's like using technology in the way it should be used. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. I mean, technology is to help humans. Technology is not the beyond. It's about, just getting smiles on people's faces, as simple as that. And that's what you want to do is give them more of those experiences.
That's amazing. I'm gonna quote this one. It's gonna stay with me. Helping is new selling, and that's what you should remember. And more you want to sell and grow yourself in an organization or to your customer, figure out ways to contribute and help.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, TCS is the embody of that. I always say that I mean, there's no company which does this better. The word resilience, I think has been spoken, but to me is about, healing is a process by itself. We don't know the stories of everyone.
Yep.
There's a unfortunate situation when everyone's virtual. You think, yeah, that's the world. It's easy world because you can just click a button, get on a call, speak to each other. Then you give 10 tasks, 3 tasks, and say, hey, come back with that. But in the
Yep.
background, each one of them have to worry about their parents. If they're sitting in London, they're thinking about parents in Ahmedabad. And if they're sitting in Amsterdam, they're thinking about parents in Stockholm. Then they have a small child. And I'm really trying to understand, how can I start thinking about the healing process? Because to me, I think the healing is the important part. The rest will fall in place. Then you feel, they've been heard. They want to feel, I won't say move on, but I think it's just about calmness in their soul. So that's something which I'm really keen to know what's the way to look at.
I'm currently writing a book on
Hmm.
calmness, and the whole
Yeah,
idea is like a commission by Amazon. The whole idea of the book is how calmness can become our superpower. Not like
lovely.
calm as relaxed, but calm
Yeah,
as poise and active, calm as a reservoir of the energy required to deal with challenges and uncertainty. And that cannot happen when we are in the middle of a battle. It cannot
yeah,
happen when you are on the battlefield. It must be done when you're not on the battlefield. It's like somebody trying to learn how to operate a gun maybe on the battlefield. It doesn't work
yeah.
like that. And
I
people
agree with you.
think of calmness when they're anxious, they think of healing when they are in the middle of that difficult situation. What we require to do is create a method, create a system, create a culture where we can actually tap into that calmness every single day, at least for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Make it so practical. How we go on Instagram every single day. And we do it naturally because that's like a cool thing to do. And that's what everybody
Yeah,
does. I believe things like tapping into your own calmness or working towards not mental health, but I feel mental fitness. So you kind of every day do something like your physical fitness for your mental fitness. So when things get difficult, you do not fall apart. And that is
yeah,
not a coping mechanism. That's the lifestyle decision, which I feel is essential. We should make that shift from mental health as dealing with anxiety and depression to mental fitness as a everyday way of looking at life. So that filter needs to change. And I look up to all the technology firms to really look at this as a lifestyle, like how Instagram could make access available, how Google worked at it. So if you all you guys, like an appeal to all the technology creative minds to make calmness as a way of looking at the larger solution, we'll be able to really reach out to people, and then we do not have to fight it on a daily basis. I'll give you a small example. During the pandemic, we started a social initiative to teach people a stroke of graphology as a graphotherapy stroke, which allows your mind to calm down. And we ran some anti-anxiety workshops for them, and everything was, when the lockdown happened, the first one, nobody knew what to do, so we said, okay,
Sure.
everybody's anxious, let's help. In the last 18 months, we had more than 10,000 people trying this, practicing
Well,
this, and people have changed the way they looked at killing themselves. When they were in COVID, the parents were in COVID, everything was getting helpless. They sat in the hospitals, and people sent me photos and videos. It is moving, heartwarming to even think about it. Doing that practice, so that was a mechanism done every single day to build your muscles to be calm, not as a reaction, but as a path of building the extra muscle that was otherwise not available. So
I love it. I think, yeah.
imagine having tools and methods like that, where we have so many already. It's just that we don't have the culture where it is cool enough to practice these things on a daily basis. I feel that is needed.
No, I think you give a great answer. I mean, there's this, thing of, calmness. You're right. I mean, calmness is not about when you're angry. Calmness is about, it's a state of mind. You gotta, you know, it is in a way to relax your mind, like the way you relax your body.
Right.
And some of the best decisions happen when you are, it's like, how we used to grow up, and we used to sit in those trains with no iPad, and we used to get bored,
Sure.
and the best ideas came from there. Correct.
And you observed people and you looked around and you had no rush to reach anywhere. And we didn't struggle
Exactly.
with like what to do with 24 hours of traveling. We did
Yeah.
something and we knew we'll figure it out. Also, I feel calmness is the poise when you are at high intensity, when you are making the best possible decision, when you're in your zone, when you are in your element, you're performing, you're giving that best presentation or brainstorming. There's a moment where you know you are in control. Imagine people being trained like athletes, people,
Yeah.
everyday people are trained to have that calmness. Then we won't have the issue of healing as much, because people won't
Mm,
collapse and break down, because they'll keep practicing. It's like unhealthy generation, when they have to run a bit they feel
mm,
exhausted. But healthy
correct.
generation, people practicing marathon and preparing for
Yeah.
it, if you make them run for 2 kilometers, they won't get exhausted, because they do that regularly every year. And that is what we require, probably mental marathons.
I love that word. I think let's work on this mental marathon. I love that part.
I'm in, let's do this,
Yeah.
please, we
I mean,
require
people
it.
talk about resilience, but I think it's the mental marathon. It's about consistency of staying calm rather than just staying calm for 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
Good stuff.
pausing and running again, and pausing and running
Yeah.
again. Yeah, I love that.
Love the answer.
Thank you.
Well,
I also
yeah.
want to ask you this question. You use sports to connect with your community, and
Yeah.
not once but multiple times. Please tell us.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by that story, and so simple, it's so real, and so doable for all of us. And most of the time, people wait for others to solve problems. They do not act on it proactively. So please share that
Yeah,
story.
so I think for me, sports is, I need to, it just gets me going in a day. I mean, I love going to the gym, but sports is what I enjoy.
Mm.
So one of the things, I realized when I moved to London was, their sports is played as season. Like not in India, we have sunshine 24/7. There, the winters are gloomy and the summers are bright. And in summers, people play cricket. And in the winters, people play football.
Mm.
So my biggest challenge was cricket was natural to me because I've lived in India, so I enjoyed that. I used to play football, but I never used to play five-a-side. When I left, now obviously in India, five-a-side is a big thing.
Mm.
So I, in fact, was invited by someone and saying, "Hey, do you want to come and play?" So it was a bunch of dads, school dads, and then it struck me that this is such a great community because you come in, you play for an hour, and then you go to a pub or you go for a curry.
Mm.
And then what I started to do was I said, okay, this is great. So every time I met a dad who I thought was interesting, and I said, do you play football? 99% everybody's played football. And everybody said, yeah. I said, can I add you in this group of football dads? Because all of us are absolutely, our, our running skills are bad. passing skills of that. But the good thing is it's a social group. And you would imagine I started with 10 dads, and now when I left London, it was around 50 of us in that group. And it was a
Wow.
thriving community. I mean, people said, hey, Ash, a friend of mine is coming. He would want to join. Could you add him? And I said, I would love to add him. And I, every time I go back to, London, this group says, hey, we are now almost 120, 140 people thriving.
Wow.
So, and the same thing happened when I moved to Netherlands. I said, okay, what can I do different? Then I found the city which I live, Hague, is an expat town. There are people from Shell, Maersk, European Parent Office, Europol, and these are all expats who come for 3 years. And they're like saying, okay, how do I connect and network? So I actually started a dads group of saying, okay, fine, we're going to all basically, it started with 5 dads. And I said, okay, should we do something where we could do things together? We could, have a game of football, go for go-karting. And they said, hey, I would love it, because what happens is I met them all where we all would drive for us kids' birthday parties. And while the kids would enjoy, we would sit and wait for them
Get
in that
bored.
miserable weather. Exactly. Drink coffee and look at each other. And I said, okay, why? So there's a quite an interesting word which says, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing.
So true. So true. So if you have to teach our listeners 3 things before you go, your life mantra, your way of like hacking, or if I have to ask, gamifying survival, like, you're like a great player, no matter where you're thrown, you kind of figure out a way to gamify this. And with all your great achievements and constant reinventing, if I may say, you have been, figuring things out. So what if you have to give like, 3 things to keep in mind?
I think, one, I mean, as a generation, young generation, you got to get into a habit of dreaming, be the habit of dreaming, dream, 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 because it is amazing. Because what it does is I always say is a word is, in a way, you're helping rehearse the future, what's in your mind. So you need to have that. Otherwise, you can be very happy and settled. Because if you don't dream, you're not restless, you're not thinking. I mean, there's also a nice way to sit and dream next to a river, but there's also a way to find ways to dream about what you want to be next. The other thing is spend time understanding people. I think that is a key thing. We spend so much time confusing the people, what we see. Spend time seeing behind the people, what gets them excited. And that is where you're going to connect with people better, because we are so busy looking at people's social profiles, meeting them in the first instance, and making a mental note of, oh, this person is like that.
Mm.
I think one thing which I learned, I think in the West, was when I meet friends in India, people always say, okay, what do you do? Where you come from? Where do you belong to?
Sure.
Which was the hardest for me when I moved to this part of the world, because nobody asks you those questions.
And it's offensive to ask those questions.
Yeah, so it's hard for you to say, okay, how do I connect with this person? Because so for me, then I need to think about is what excites you. What do you do? Somebody say, I'm a stay-home dad. Okay, I've never met a stay-home dad. So what is that? So I'm sure it's a sport or a food which will excite them. So try connecting people on what gets them excited, rather than trying to put a label on them through those 3 or 4 questions. I think you will have long-lasting friends, and that's an attitude you need to find wherever you do. Work with a client, work with a partner, work with colleagues, or making new friends. I think the third one is, I wouldn't say adaptability, but I would just say that, be a sponge. Be a sponge to, learn new things. I mean, I used to hate reading books. So my knowledge came out of listening to people. I used to love listening to people. I would ask, and so what it did was I got into asking the right questions, because otherwise people can talk. In our country, we all love talking. We all have a great emotions, and we love to have views. So I think the ability, being a sponge, is either you read through books, either get experiences, or get into habit of meeting people who are going to teach you a lot. And I did that a lot. I was ruthless about finding the bosses who taught me. There are bosses who I didn't have a great time, but they're great friends today, because they pushed you in a certain way which you didn't want to be. Because of me. And one word I always say, and I always write it down and tell every colleague of mine and every friend: when you're uncomfortable, you're growing.
Wow.
And you need to think about that. If you start getting comfortable, you're not growing. When you're uncomfortable, you're growing. And that has to become your, put it on as a sticker And just remember that when you are, feeling depressed, when you are, that emotion is going to help you get strengthened, because I think life is like a full circle. Everything which you get it when you're young, the same decision you need to make when you're old. But when you're old, you will have that experience, patience,
True.
and maybe a data point to make that decision. So I think three things is what I
Brilliant.
said.
If you only think about your own life and do not think about the other person, their perspective, where they come from, it's difficult. Like one of the Friday episodes that we did on the podcast was around stress appetite. And I
Yeah.
was talking about we need to build stress appetite, that discomfort, embracing it, or pretty much creating it so that you stretch your own muscle to deal with the problem. I think it's brilliant.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
cool.
I love that. I think I learned many good things from you,
Thank you.
which I'm going to write. I think I need to work on my own mental marathon and sort a lot of good things. That was great.
Thank you so much for being on the show. This was wonderful. So many learnings in one single conversation. I look forward to our listeners' comments on this and hearing what all you learned and what exactly you will be implementing from these conversations. We had so many points to implement. I have made my notes and I'm going to do the same. Thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you for being over.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for challenging me. I think I learned more about myself than I learned. I mean, it was like a full circle for me having this conversation, and really appreciate it. And I think it was nice that I knew what I was doing, but I think you backed it with data. So my hunch became data. So thanks for that.
Thank you. That's what we want to do. Like otherwise people look at graphology and they say, oh, this is a voodoo thing. No, it's not. It's
No, it's not.
absolutely mathematical. And more you understand it, it just becomes wonderful and beautiful.
Can I say just one last thing?
Yes, please.
In the age of computers, I think all of us are even struggling now to sign our own um, signature, because everything computer does.
Right.
And when, I remember Rashi asked me to write a note, I had to write 5 pages to get one right to send it to you.
Our
But let me be
producer is
honest,
very tough. She would not
no,
let you
she's
in.
brilliant.
Yeah.
She was brilliant. But the good thing was, it really got me thinking. They say, there's a word nasha. That's what writing is.
Wow.
And I think I would urge everybody to just go back to doing that, because it
Thank you.
just, gets you. And when you write, you remember. It's as simple as that. So
Thank you.
thanks for that.
We
Great.
will make you write more. Don't worry. Like more graphology, more writing. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode of the Absolutely Right podcast. Every single time I have a conversation like this, intense, raw, and full of penny drop moments, I thoroughly enjoyed. And I also make my notes to make sure that I implement my lessons from each conversation in my actual life. So, performance is not something that happens one fine day, it's something that you build towards every week, every day pretty much. You try to solve the problem in a better manner with more efficient tools. I ask our APT participants. APT is India's first mental and emotional gym where we practice these penny drop moments. Every week on a Saturday, we meet and discuss a different perspective to look at a life situation, like decision making, like solving problems, like dealing with relationships. And unfortunately, we are not given tools to do that. So imagine coming to a gym where instead of working on your physical strength, you work on your mental and emotional strength. How many times we get to do that? And because we don't end up doing it, we suffer for a longer period of time. Now, if you want to avoid that, come know more about it on aptforme.com. All other information about my work you can find on aditisurana.com. If you like this conversation and if you think it can help somebody who would like to become the best possible leader they can be, somebody from the marketing field, then do share this episode with them. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms. I'll see you on Friday with one more episode of the Graphology series where we're going to talk about how to decode your personality, this time with one more factor of handwriting. So do tune in. I'll see you there. Happy writing.